Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to chapter 4 of Canto 1, which is titled Appearance of Sri Narada. So before we get into the Sanskrit shloka, I like to read the entire chapter so you can understand the sequence with which uh, the structure of the pastime is actually being narrated, and then you can get into each of the shlokas. So actually, Narada Muni appears only in the last two shlokas. Up until then, there are certain questions that are being asked by Shaunaka Muni, and that is what we're going to talk about. So this chapter begins with Srila Vyasadeva said, on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus, Shaunaka Muni, who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Shaunaka said, O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage, Shukadeva Goswami. In what period and at what place was this first begun? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? Which literature? The Srimad Bhagavatam. His, Vyasadeva's son, was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist, whose mind was always concentrated in monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person. While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked covered their bodies with cloth, although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked. But they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and when looking at them made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made such distinctions. How was he, Srila Shukadeva, the son of Vyasa, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapuram, now Delhi, after wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded? So Shukadeva Goswami was completely blissfully unaware of his physical appearance. But still, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Just like the Lord sang the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna by putting him in a situation that would confuse him, the Lord also similarly arranged for the Srimad Bhagavatam to be spoken by the curse that was laid upon King Parikshit by Shringi, the son of Shamika Rishi. He, Shukadev Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he did this just to sanctify the residence. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was the shelter for others? We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects, except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. So essentially, from Shloka 1 to Shloka number 13 are a whole series of questions that Shaunaka Rishi, the leader of all the rishis there in Naimisharanya, is asking Suta Goswami. So, in response to these whole set of questions, Suta Goswami begins to talk about Srila Vyasadeva. Suta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium, which is the beginning of Kali Yuga. This happens on the earth in different ages due to the unseen force of time. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. So Srila Vyasadeva also was worried about the impending Kali Yuga that's going to start. Actually, it had already advented. So he was worried. He could also already see that in Kali Yuga, the lifespan of the Jivatmas would be significantly reduced. So the average lifespan for a human being is 100 years. But as Kali Yuga progresses, the 12th canto, which is the last canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, explains that the lifespan will reduce to just 25. And people will die at the age of 25. 25 will be considered old age. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. The Vedas are actually only one set. But because Vyasadeva knew that the people in Kali Yuga will not have the capacity nor the lifespan to study the Vedic scriptures, he decides to simplify the Vedas by breaking it up into 4 different sections. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately. But the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Veda. So Puranas are not meant to be dismissed as mere imaginations or stories. The Puranas contain facts based on what has already happened. Therefore, the Puranas are considered the 5th Veda. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of Rig Veda. Jaimini, the professor of the Sama Veda. And Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajuri. The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda. And my father, who is my father? Suta Goswami's father, because Suta Goswami is speaking. And my father, Romaharshana, was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. So this is how everything was divided up. Who's going to focus on what and who's going to become an expert on which topic. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples and great grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. So there is a historical context on how different groups of people in the Guru Parampara system studied the different Vedic scriptures, but only after it was divided that way. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who's very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Even in Kali Yuga, our intelligence will be reduced. Our memory power will become worse and worse. The more we depend on machines, the more we will degrade ourselves. Hence, Kali Yuga is also known as the Iron Age, the age of machines. Right? So many things are made out of iron and steel. So hence it's called the Iron Age. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. So what was the reason that Vyasadeva, who was worried about Kali Yuga having started, what could he do to help the Kali Yuga Vasis? His ultimate goal was to help us. How did he think would be the best way to help us? By simplifying the Vedas, by breaking it up into more bite-sized pieces, but those bite-sized pieces are too huge pieces for you and me to understand. But still, he does it out of compassion. So when great sages come, when great devotees come, they are always meditating on how can I make the lives of the Jivatmas who are suffering better by giving them access to what seems to be missing in their lives. Thus, he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice born. Because women generally do not go to Gurukul, Vyasadeva thought, well, what's the best way I can convey the same message and the value systems to develop the faith of those who do not and will not be studying the Vedic scriptures. But at the same time, Vyasadeva thought, I still need to keep something for them that would help them begin their spiritual journey. And therefore, he also compiles the Mahabharata, which will be easier to understand for women and others who are not authorized to study the Vedic scriptures. O twice born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Imagine you've done something great for the future. You should be pretty pleased with yourself. But that was not the stage of Vyasadeva. Just like Arjuna was perplexed, Vyasadeva was morose. He was like, something is missing. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect because he knew the essence of religion. And he said within himself, I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others friends of the twice born, can see the path of religion, which means everyone deserves help in Kali Yuga. And therefore, Vyasadeva thought, I don't want to leave anyone aside. I want to help everyone, including those who may not have that same capacity to understand the Vedic scriptures. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. So Vyasadeva was wondering, why am I not happy? Why am I not satisfied even after doing this and doing my best to help the Kali Yuga Vasis? Why do I feel the way I feel? And he's thinking to himself, maybe because I've not described devotional service in the Vedic scriptures. And maybe devotional service is something that is relished by the self realized souls and by the Supreme Lord Himself. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa on the banks of the Saraswati just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. So when the student is in trouble, the spiritual master will appear to help. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the Creator. So the context of this whole chapter is Narada Muni has come. Why has Narada Muni come? Well, because his student is a little bit in distress and he wants to guide him, he wants to help him. So when the Guru knows that the student needs help, he will manifest. So that brings us to the very first shloka, and which is 1.4.1. Vyasa uvacha
Vyasa uvacha
iti bruvanam samstuya
iti bruvanam samstuya
muninam dirgha satrinam
muninam dirgha satrinam
vriddha kulapatis sutam
vriddha kulapati sutam
bahvrichah shaunako bravit.
bhavricha shaunako bravit.
Word for word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vyasaha,
Vyasaha
Vyasadeva,
Vyasadeva
Uvacha,
uvacha
said,
said
Iti,
iti
thus,
thus
Bruvanam,
bruvanam
speaking,
speaking
Samstuya,
samstuya
congratulating,
congratulating
Muninam,
muninam
of the great sages,
of the great sages
Dirgha,
dirgha
prolonged,
prolonged
Satrinam,
satrinam
of those engaged in the performance of sacrifice,
of those engaged in the performance of sacrifice
Vriddhaha,
vriddaha
elderly,
elderly
Kulapatihi,
kulapatihi
head of the assembly,
head of the assembly
Sutam,
sutam
unto Suta Goswami,
unto Suta Goswami
Bahu Richaha,
bahu richaha
learned,
learned
Shaunakaha,
shaunakaha
of the name Shaunaka,
of the name Shaunaka.
Abravit,
Abravit,
addressed.
addressed.
Translation: Vyasadeva said,
Vyasadeva said,
on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus,
on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus,
Shaunaka Muni,
Shaunaka Muni,
who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis,
who was the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis,
engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony,
engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony,
congratulated Suta Goswami
congratulated Suta Goswami
by addressing him as follows.
by addressing him as follows.
So Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad, in a meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualifications of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Shaunaka Rishi had all these qualifications. Thus, he stood up to congratulate Sri Suta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from Shukadev Goswami and also realized it personally. So when Shukadev Goswami was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, also Srila Vyasadeva was sitting and listening to his son. And here again in Naimisharanya, Srila Vyasadeva is again sitting and hearing the Bhagavatam again, this time from the lips of Suta Goswami. But who first spoke the Bhagavatam in this context to Shukadev Goswami? It was Srila Vyasadeva himself. So when great personalities come together, the senior most person is usually the one who is authorized to address a pure personality, in this case, Suta Goswami. And therefore, Shaunaka Rishi is glorifying Suta Goswami. That's the proper etiquette. The proper etiquette is when we request someone to speak on a topmost subject matter of the Supreme Lord, we first glorify them and then make the request to ask them to speak, to invite them to speak. Therefore, he stood up to congratulate Sri Suta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from Shukadev Goswami and also realized it personally. So not only has Suta Goswami heard Srimad Bhagavatam, he has also imbibed it, realized it, that difference between jnana and vijnana. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. A good student will always be submissive. So even if you're very well learned, you will never try to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. So every acharya will come and adjust what is it that they want to convey as a message to the general mass of people who are looking for help. So we discussed in one of the previous classes, there's a difference between the principle and the details. The principle never changes. The principle is always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. But the details may be adjusted depending on time, place, and circumstance. And that adjustment is made by the acharya. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it. Yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. So in order to help the audience understand esoteric topics like Bhagavan, Atma, Paramatma, Jivatma, Prakriti, the speaker can make it as interesting as possible so that the faith of that person develops in coming back and hearing more. So Srila Prabhupada is saying this is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Shaunaka, could estimate the value of the speaker, Sri Suta Goswami, simply by his uttering Yathaditam and Yathamati, and therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original Acharya. So, if you want to pose questions to someone from whom you are seeking clarity, you first thing is the student must make sure that they are coming in the parampara system. They are not. The student should have sufficient intelligence to understand who to go ask the question to. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting, which means the student made sure that the person who is about to speak comes in the parampara system. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam, so that real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless the situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purposes is useless labor, both for the speaker and for the audience. Prabhupada writes, when the speaker speaks Srimad Bhagavatam, it is not only that the Bhagavatam and the contents of the Bhagavatam are pleasing to the audience, but he should preach in such a way that it provokes questions and provokes the hearer to ask himself, what am I doing? So an effective preacher, speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam will not only focus on the pastimes, but will also leave a lot more behind for the audience. You see, otherwise the audience can be lulled into simply listening to lecture after lecture after lecture after lecture simply because the topic is so pleasing. But the preacher's purpose is to provoke the audience to think. Then you could say the purpose is served. So the objective is not just to relay information. The objective is to help the other person develop their faith. And an effective preacher will know how to do that. That brings us to Shloka number 2 of chapter 4 of Canto 1. Shaunaka Uvacha
Shaunaka Uvacha
Suta Suta Mahabhaga
Suta Suta Mahabhaga
Vadano Vadatam Vara
Vadano Vadatam Vara
Atham Bhagavatim Punyam
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam
Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha.
Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha
Meanings Shaunakaha.
Shaunakaha
Shaunaka.
Shaunaka
Uvacha
Uvacha
said.
said
Suta Suta.
Suta Suta
O Suta Goswami.
O Suta Goswami
Mahabhaga.
Mahabhaga,
The most fortunate.
the most fortunate.
Vada.
Vada,
Please speak.
please speak.
Naha.
Naha,
Unto us.
unto us.
Vadatam.
Vadatam,
Of those who can speak.
of those who can speak.
Vara,
Vara,
respected.
respected.
Katham,
Katham,
message.
message.
Bhagavatim,
Bhagavati,
of the Bhagavatam.
of the Bhagavatam.
Punyam,
Punyam,
pious.
pious.
Yat,
Yat,
which.
which.
Aha,
Aha,
said.
said.
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan,
greatly powerful.
greatly powerful.
Shukaha,
Shukaha,
Sri Shukadeva Goswami.
Shri Sukadev Goswami.
Translation. Shaunaka said,
Shaunaka said,
O Suta Goswami,
O Suta Goswami,
you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite.
you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite.
Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam,
Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam,
which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadeva Goswami.
which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadev Goswami.
So the Purport Prabhupada writes, Suta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Shaunaka Goswami out of great joy because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Shukadev Goswami. They were not interested in hearing it from a bogus person who would interpret it in his own way to suit his own purpose. Generally, the so called Bhagavatam reciters are either professional readers or so called learned impersonalists who cannot enter the transcendental personal activities of the Supreme Person. Such impersonalists twist some meanings out of Bhagavatam to suit and support impersonalist views, and the professional readers at once go to the 10th canto to misexplain the most confidential part of the Lord's pastimes. So Prabhupada is simply warning us that when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, we must begin with Canto and work our way towards Canto 10. What is there in Canto 10? It has all the pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna. But there are some readers who may go directly to the Rasa Leela, which is there in the 10th Canto. And Prabhupada is saying, we will not be able to understand the Rasa Leela until we have actually spent time understanding who the Supreme Lord is. So it takes Shukadev Goswami 9 cantos before he can actually talk about Krishna. The topic of Krishna is so confidential, it cannot be easily understood. Therefore, to prepare the Jivatma who is interested in spirituality, to prepare the Jivatma to accept that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he has to spend 9 cantos explaining who the Supreme Lord is in so many different facets of the Supreme Lord before you come to the facet that is the sweetest aspect of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying we have to be careful who we hear the Bhagavatam from. There are many, many, many people today who recite the Srimad Bhagavatam. We need to be careful not to hear from those who are reading for the purposes of earning a living. This book belongs to everyone. The pastimes of the Lord belong to everyone. Yes, one must offer Guru Dakshina, for sure. But Bhagavatam is not meant to be read professionally. Neither of these reciters are bona fide persons to recite Bhagavatam. Only one who is prepared to present Bhagavatam in the light of Shukadev Goswami, and only those who are prepared to hear Shukadev Goswami and his representative are bona fide participants in the transcendental discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. So in one statement, Prabhupada is saying, if it is a professional person narrating the pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam, and people are sitting in the audience and listening to this professional person, neither one of them are, one is not qualified to teach, the other is not qualified to learn. So the student also has to be careful who they select to hear the scriptures from, because this is an important aspect, because professional readers may not go into the depth of the topics. They may just give you titillating aspects of the pastimes of the Lord, but may not delve into what it means to be a devotee of the Lord, what it means to perform bhakti. Therefore, Prabhupada is warning us that we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam from someone who comes in the Parampara system. So, in the first shloka and the second shloka, what has Shaunaka Rishi done? He has glorified Suta Goswami. So, you glorify the speaker before you ask them to speak, right? It is just etiquette. That is how it should always be done. So, when the preacher comes to sit, the person introducing the devotee, introducing the speaker, must always glorify the speaker before the actual session begins. So here in this third shloka, the question is pertaining to the history of Srimad Bhagavatam itself. How did the Srimad Bhagavatam get written? What was the context? Kasmin yuge pravritteyam
Kasmin yuge pravriteyam
dhane vakena hetuna
taneva kena hetuna
kutas sanchoditah krishnah
kutah sanjotita Krishnaha
kritavan samhitam munihi.
kritavan samhitam munihi
Kasmin,
kasmin
in which
in which
yuge,
yuge
period,
period
pravritta,
pravritta
was begun,
was begun
iyam,
iyam
this,
this
sthane,
sthane
in the place,
in the place
va,
va
or,
or
kena,
kena
on what,
on what
hetuna,
hetuna
ground,
ground
kutaha,
kutaha
where from,
where from
sanchoditaha,
sanchoditaha
inspired by,
inspired by
krishnaha,
Krishnaha
Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa,
Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa
Kritavan,
kritavan
compiled,
compiled
Samhitam,
samhitam
Vedic literature,
Vedic literature
Munihi,
munihi
the learned.
the learned.
Translation. In what period and at what place was this first begun?
In what period and at what place was this first begun?
And why was this taken up?
And why was this taken up?
From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage,
From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage,
get the inspiration to compile this literature?
get the inspiration to compile this literature?
Prabhupada writes in the purport, because Srimad Bhagavatam is the special contribution of Srila Vyasadeva, there are so many inquiries by the learned Shaunaka Muni. It was known to them that Srila Vyasadeva had already explained the text of the Vedas in various ways up to the Mahabharata for the understanding of less intelligent women, Shudras, and fallen members of the family of twice born men. Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all of them because it has nothing to do with anything mundane. So the inquiries are very intelligent and relevant. Prabhupada is saying that the rishis were very anxious to hear about the topmost contribution of Srila Vyasadeva, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. And they knew that this was meant for one and all. It was not exclusive to any one section of society. And they also seemed to know that this particular literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, was not some mundane stories. They are all pastimes of the Lord with his devotees. Therefore, they were anxious to hear about this very special literature compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. That brings us to shloka number 4. Tasya putro mahayogi
Tasya putro mahayogi
samadring nirvikalpaha kalpakaha
samadrin nirvikalpakaha
ekantamatarunnidраha
ekantamadirunnidраha
gudho mudha iveyate.
gudho modha iveyate
Tasya,
tasya
his
his
putra
putra
putraha
putraha
son
son
mahayogi,
mahayogi
a great devotee,
a great devotee
samadrik,
samadrik
equibalanced,
equibalanced
nirvikalpakaha,
nirvikalpakaha
absolute monist,
absolute monist
ekantamatihi,
ekantamatihi
fixed in monism or oneness of mind,
fixed in monism or oneness of mind
unnidraha,
unnidraha
surpassed nescience,
surpass nations
gudhaha,
gudhaha
not exposed,
not exposed
mudhaha,
mudhaha
stunted,
stunted
iva,
iva
like,
like
iyate,
iyate
appears like.
appears like.
Translation. His, Vyasadeva's son,
His Vyasadeva's son
was a great devotee,
was a great devotee,
an equibalanced monist,
an equibalanced monist,
whose mind was always concentrated in monism.
whose mind was always concentrated in monism.
He was transcendental to mundane activities,
He was transcendental to mundane activities,
but being unexposed,
but being unexposed,
he appeared like an
he,
ignorant person.
he appeared like an ignorant person.
But Srila Shukadev Goswami was a liberated soul, and thus he remained always alert, not to be trapped by the illusory energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, this alertness is very lucidly explained. The liberated soul and the conditioned soul have different engagements. The liberated soul is always engaged in the progressive path of spiritual attainment, which is something like a dream for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul cannot imagine the actual engagements of the liberated soul. While the conditioned soul thus dreams about spiritual engagements, the liberated soul is awake. Similarly, the engagement of a conditioned soul appears to be a dream for the liberated soul. Essentially, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, what is night for the learned is daytime for those who are materialistic, and vice versa. Essentially, these two classes of beings cannot understand what each other is doing. The liberated soul can never fathom why is it that the conditioned soul is so preoccupied with materialism. The materialistic person can never understand why these liberated souls are not interested in material things at all. What's wrong with them? So both classes of people think something is missing in the other class. A conditioned soul and a liberated soul may apparently be on the same platform, but factually they are differently engaged. And their attention is always alert, either in sense enjoyment or in self realization. The conditioned soul is absorbed in matter, whereas the liberated soul is completely indifferent to matter. This indifference is explained as follows. So, what is happening in this section? So, the first two shlokas, Shaunaka Rishi has glorified Suta Goswami. In the third shloka, Shaunaka Rishi has asked about the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, that's question number 1. And now in shlokas 4 all the way to shloka 8, the qualities and questions about Shukadev Goswami, how he was actually perceived in Hastinapura. Because Hastinapura is a modern city compared to where Shukadev Goswami may have grown up. Therefore, how was he actually perceived by the citizens of Hastinapura? Those are the questions that will be asked. Which brings us to the last shloka that we'll do for the day, which is shloka number 5 of chapter 4. Drishtvanuyantam rishim atmajam
दृष्ट्वानुयान्तं ऋषिम् आत्मजम् अभ्यनग्नम्
devyo hriya paridadhurna sutasya chitram
देव्यो ह्रिया परिददुर्नसुतस्य चित्रम्
tadvikshya pritchati munau jagadostavasti.
तद्वीक्षय पृच्छति मुनौ जगदुस्तवास्ति
Stri pumbhidha nasutasya vivikta drishte.
स्त्रीपुंभीडा न तुत्सुतस्य विविक्तदृष्टेः
Drishtva,
दृष्ट्वा
by seeing.
by seeing
Anuyantam,
अनुयान्तं
following.
following
Rishim,
Rishim
the sage.
the sage
Atmajam,
Atmajam
his son.
his son
Api,
Api
in spite of.
in spite of
Nagnam,
Nagnam
not naked.
not naked
Devyaha,
Devyaha
beautiful damsels.
beautiful damsels
Kriya,
Hriya
out of shyness.
out of shyness
Paridadhu,
Paridaduhu
covered the body.
covered the body
Na,
Na
not.
not
Sutasya,
Sutasya
of the sun.
of the sun
Chitram,
Chitram
astonishing.
astonishing
Tat vikshya,
Tat Vikshya
by seeing that.
by seeing that
Pritchati,
Prichati
asking.
asking
Munau,
Munau
unto the Muni Vyasa.
unto the Muni Vyasa
Jagaduhu,
Jagaduhu
replied.
replied
Tava,
Tava
your.
your
Asti,
Asti
there are.
there are
Stri Pum,
Stri Pum
male and female.
male and female
Bhida,
Kida
differences.
differences
Na,
na,
not,
not,
tu,
tu,
but,
but,
sutasya,
sutasya,
of the sun,
of the sun,
vivikta,
vivikta,
purified,
purified,
drishdehe,
drishdehe,
of one who looks.
of one who looks.
Translation. While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son,
While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son,
beautiful young damsels
beautiful young damsels
who were bathing naked
who were bathing naked
covered their bodies with cloth.
covered their bodies with cloth,
Although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked.
although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked.
But they had not done so
But they had not done so
when his son had passed.
when his son had passed.
The sage inquired about this,
The sage inquired about this,
and the young ladies replied
and the young ladies replied
that his son was purified,
that his son was purified,
and when looking at them,
and when looking at them,
made no distinction between male and female.
made no distinction between male and female.
But the sage made such distinctions.
But the sage made such distinctions.
Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 5.18, it is said that a learned sage looks equally on a learned and gentle Brahmana, a Chandala, a dog eater, a dog, or a cow due to his spiritual vision. Srila Shukadev Goswami attained that stage. Thus, he did not see a male or female, he saw all living entities in different dress. The ladies who were bathing could understand the mind of a man simply by studying his demeanor, just as by looking at a child one can understand how innocent he is. Shukadev Goswami was a young boy, 16 years old, and therefore all the parts of his body were developed. He was naked also, and so were the ladies. But because Shukadev Goswami was transcendental to sex relations, he appeared very innocent. The ladies, by their special qualification, could sense this at once, and therefore they were not very concerned about him. But when his father passed, the ladies quickly dressed. The ladies were exactly like his children or grandchildren, yet they reacted to the presence of Vyasadeva according to the social custom, because Srila Vyasadeva played the part of a householder. So the reaction of the ladies to two different gentlemen was quite different. They were taking a bath, they were not dressed up. But when Shukadev Goswami looked at them and passed by them, they were least bit bothered. But yet, when the father passes by them, they hurriedly try to put their clothes. And Srila Vyasadeva himself notices this difference in behavior by the women, and he asks them, why did you behave differently when my son passed you compared to what you're doing when I have passed you? So the ladies replied, your son is a pure soul. When he saw us, he didn't see us as women. He only saw the spirit soul. Whereas you, Srila Vyasadeva, you see those distinctions because you're a grahastha. A householder has to distinguish between a male and female, otherwise, he cannot be a householder. One should therefore attempt to know the distinction between body and soul without any attachment for male and female. Only when there is a distinction that there is a male and that other person is a female, do you actually enter Grihastha life. But if you see everybody as spirit soul, then you are already in a self-realized stage. As long as such distinction is there, one should not try to become a sannyasi like Shukadeva Goswami. Which means as long as you see these bodily distinctions, you should not become a sannyasi. At least theoretically, one must be convinced that a living entity is neither male nor female. So Prabhupada is saying, at least can we understand that ultimately we all occupy different bodies. It's just that I'm in a female body, some of you may be in a male body. But what is our real identity? Our real identity is that we are spirit souls. Theoretically, we understand this. But the way we lead our lives may not be on the same platform of having understood the distinction between matter and spirit soul. The outward dress is made of matter by material nature to attract the opposite sex and thus keep one entangled in material existence. So marriage means entanglement. Finding a partner means entanglement. You can no longer focus on scriptures as much. A liberated soul is above this perverted distinction. He does not distinguish between one living being and another. For him, they are all one and the same spirit. The perfection of the spiritual vision is the liberated stage. And Srila Shukadev Goswami attained that stage. Therefore, even the women were able to very quickly detect who's self-realized and who's not. Srila Vyasadeva was also in the transcendental stage, but because he was in the householder's life, he did not pretend to be a liberated soul as a matter of custom. So Prabhupada is explaining Srila Vyasadeva was also no ordinary personality. He had transcendental vision. He was an exalted devotee of the Lord, but he was not pretending to be a sannyasi. He was in a grihastha and he conducted himself as a grihastha. Therefore, the women responded differently to the two different individuals because they were able to distinguish between a sannyasi and a householder. So there are many more questions about the genesis of Srimad Bhagavatam, which will come in the next set of shlokas that we will do the following Sunday. So thank you very much.